how often is Arthur Staple refreshing his phone, Twitter, checking your text messages right now as we wait for the Patrick Kane news?
Well, I know it's not going to happen now, so it's fine. It's the cap gymnastics sort of dictate it's going to be a couple days. The only thing we're waiting for right now is to see if what's going to happen with him as far as a hearing goes. These last few days, since it seemed like that was full speed ahead for this Kane trade, the way the Rangers have been contorting themselves with their roster and all the attendant nonsense that's happened. It's been pretty ridiculous with these guys the last 3 games or so. And they actually won one last night. They were down to 14 skaters at one point with 2 healthy guys sitting in full uniform on the bench. It was haven't seen that one in a while, and I don't think I'll see it again. And I'm sure that they don't want to see it for much longer. So the sooner they can make this deal, the soonest time they can make this deal, they'll do it.
Yeah, I wonder with the way that those 2 players, I think Braden Schneider was one. I'm trying to remember the other one.
Ryan Carpenter.
There we go. Ryan Carpenter's the other name. The fact that they're sitting on the bench, they're healthy guys. Maybe they played a couple seconds. I didn't get to watch the game, but like, there's no way the league looks at that and thinks like, oh, we're just going to let that slide, right? Like, there's something that kind of has to be done. It's a little bit ridiculous, all for Patrick Kane, which, look, a marquee player. We've made the point on the podcast that, like, there's still a star quality and a star name to him, but like, there's no way that like the league looks at what they did the other night with those 2 players sitting and they think, oh yeah, we want more teams to do this when it comes to acquiring players, all in the name of accruing cap space, right?
Yeah, I mean, nobody says you have to make the deal either. And this, they've already gone out and got Vladimir Tarasenko, they got Nico Mikkola, they got Tyler Mott. There's certainly a debate to be had whether they need Patrick Kane on this team that's already a pretty good team and already has lots of offensive firepower. But it seems like that train left the station a long time ago, and they're going to do it. And obviously, part of them doing it is doing what they did the other night, which is basically bubble wrapping Braden Schneider and Ryan Carpenter, making sure that they didn't see the ice, even as Keandre Miller got ejected. And again, you don't have to spit on a guy, I would say, is the other argument.
Ugh.
The counter argument to is that, like, hey, you guys could have made it through with 16 skaters if one of your guys didn't spit in Drew Doughty's face. Mika Zibanejad took a big Doughty shot off his ankle. He did come back. So some of these things are self-inflicted for sure. And the cap situation, everybody seems to be in cap hell these days. And it's, like I said, the question is, do they need Patrick Kane? I suppose that's for a different time because they're going to get him. It certainly seems that way. It's just what they have to do to get there has been a little bit ridiculous for sure.
Arthur, you've brought up the Keandre Miller spitting incident, and let's, for a moment, let's just dive into that, because I think if you just see the clip with no context, it's awful, right? I mean, here's Keandre Miller right in Drew Doughty's face, spitting on him. You were there, you talked to the people involved. Like what's your sense and, what's your feeling on how and why this happened? And do you expect there to be extra discipline here for the Rangers defenseman?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think he's getting suspended. It was clear cut, completely accidental. I think Keandre Miller, there was nothing that precipitated it that would say it would ever warrant that kind of thing. There was no heated exchange between the two of them. I think, as Drew Doughty said, he's like, I don't even think I said anything to the guy. They were just sort of skating into a post whistle scrum. Nobody was throwing punches. Nobody was ready to pull gloves and sticks out or helmets off or anything like that. It just happened. And I think it would, Keandre Miller is a pretty calm, collected guy and doesn't necessarily have a reputation for flying off the handle. I'm sure, he seemed, through a couple team sources that I talked to, he seemed quite remorseful, admitted he did it, couldn't say why he did it, went to Drew Doughty afterwards and tried to explain himself. It seemed like that maybe buried the hatchet a little bit. I'm sure Drew Doughty, who's been in the league a long time and never had that happen to him before, was thinking, who is this guy and why is he doing this to me? But having said all that, I don't think saying it was an accident gets you out of jail for the discipline part. So I think, the precedent was set, whatever it was, 4 years ago when Garnet Hathaway spit on Eric Goodbranson, and those are 2 heavyweight guys who were probably angry with each other or ready to go or whatever. And that was 3 games. If this one is 2, that seems like a fair penalty. If it's 3, I assume that's fair too. It's just something that can't happen in a game, and I'm sure Keandre Miller knows that.
I don't know if in that situation from a couple years ago, you could say there was any anything that would suggest that was an accident. But I wonder in this case if Keandre Miller maintaining that, what he did was accidental and him going to Drew Doughty to try to resolve things. I wonder if that plays at all in the league's mind when it comes time to talking to him for the Department of Player Safety.
Yeah, I think just talking to a league source a little bit last night, they're saying like I think 99% of hearings start with "I didn't mean to do it." Whether it's a cross check to the face or
Yeah.
a sucker punch or any of the offenses that can get you suspended these days. I don't think intent was necessarily the foremost thing on the player's mind. So I think this kind of falls into that category. Even it seems like a much more deliberate act. Even an accidental spit is still a spit, and it's still something that's considered beyond the pale in the hockey code and in the hockey rule book. So I don't think there's a chance he avoids a suspension here.
I think right now in the next day or so, probably a lot of the attention will be on Miller and what the fallout is. And then we'll probably all go rushing back to Patrick Kane before the deadline on Friday. And I thought it was so interesting, Arthur, when the Devils traded for Timo Meier, we were waiting. It felt like forever to see what the return was. What's your best guess on a potential return to Chicago for Patrick Kane? And is there a way that the Rangers can execute this deal and not give up Kako or Lafreniere or anything of that ilk? Or are they going to have to part with one of those premium assets to get a rental in Patrick Kane?
Well, I'll say if they were going to part with a roster player who was making a decent amount of money, the trade would have already happened because they wouldn't be doing all these cap gymnastics. So I think that's your first clue that they did not give up anything off their roster, nothing of value in the organization. All of their prospects played in the AHL the other night after kind of the first wave of moves where they traded Vitaly Kravtsov to Vancouver to free up some cap space. They put Jake Leschyshyn on waivers to free up some more cap space. So my understanding is, Scott Powers has been working this from the Chicago end, and we've combined on a couple stories. We're both pretty aware that this is going to be just a draft pick deal. There's not going to be a first round pick involved. Maybe there's conditions that could turn something into a first if the Rangers make the conference finals or the Stanley Cup finals. But my understanding is Chris Drury was not going to be willing to give up a first, especially after having given up one of their two firsts in this draft for Vladimir Tarasenko and Nico Mikkola. I think he was holding pretty firm in the belief that Patrick Kane only wants to be a Ranger. This isn't a free-for-all where everybody can throw in their best bid, and Chicago's got lots of offers to pick from. It certainly seems like Patrick Kane has told the Hawks, make the best deal you can with the Rangers. It's either that or I'm going to maybe get surgery on his hip that needs something done down the road. So that kind of boxed in Chicago right away. And I don't think the Rangers were willing to help out a team, even in the pursuit of getting a surefire Hall of Famer. So, if you see a second round pick plus another mid round pick, I would think that might be it. And it sounds like, you say to yourself, how can you not get a first round pick for Patrick Kane, even at his age and with his health status right now? I think there's a lot of factors that go into it, but it certainly seems that's the case.
What I'm wondering, it's out there that it seems like the earliest a trade between the Rangers and the Hawks could happen could be Wednesday with all the different cap gymnastics going on. What's stopping the Rangers and the Hawks from getting this done like on deadline day? If this is all being done in the name of accruing as much cap space as possible to make this work, why not max this out until the last possible moment on deadline day, as opposed to, all right, let's see if we can get it done on Wednesday, or maybe Thursday is the day to do it. Like, why do I see this going down right to the wire on Friday?
Well, mostly to do with the schedule. I think the Rangers, what they've done with their roster these last 3 games is not something they want to continue to do. They play Wednesday in Philly. They play Thursday at home against Ottawa. So, I think the goal is to get their roster as complete as it's going to be ahead of Friday and not have to worry about something else going wrong, another injury. They lost Ryan Lindgren in the Washington game. They were holding their breath on Mika Zibanejad last night. So I think they feel like what else can go wrong here after they've had a season of incredible health and good success. Now, they turn their backs for a minute. It's like the online meme of Donald Glover from Community goes to get the pizza and comes back in and the room's on fire. This is this is how the Rangers feel these last couple of games.
Brilliant
So
reference, sir. Brilliant.
that's how old I am. I can't show the meme. I can just describe it. That's the old man version. But it's, I think they just want to get it done. I'm sure Patrick Kane, who's in Chicago away from the Hawks, wants to get it done and get here. So if they can do it by Wednesday, I think a little bit rides on what their roster is going to look like. If Ryan Lindgren can at least dress for a game, he might dress for a game and not play on Wednesday, and then they can make it happen on Wednesday. But if K'Andre Miller, as we expect, gets suspended for at least the next couple, maybe they push it to Thursday, just in terms of having a full roster. So I think the cap situation says they can do it as early as Wednesday. I think they would want to do it by Wednesday to get Patrick Kane in the lineup and have a full complement of players. But failing that, the earliest they can do it to try to get this guy into a game and try to be done with all of the shenanigans that they've had to do these last few days is probably their top priority.
And by the way, as we've been recording this podcast here, K'Andre Miller's actually put a statement out. And I'll just read it. It's very quick on Twitter. Miller writing, "I wanted to take a moment to address what occurred in last night's game. I have all the respect in the world for Drew Doughty, and what happened was completely accidental. I would never intend to do something like that on purpose. It goes against everything I am as a person and player. I felt awful about it. I am thankful Drew gave me the opportunity to apologize and explain myself in person after the game." So there, as you said, 99% of these are I didn't mean to do it, and that's the route that K'Andre Miller has taken. Now, you mentioned that they don't have to trade for Patrick Kane because they already kind of went big game hunting. They got Vlad Tarasenko. Arthur, we've seen 9 games now of Vlad Tarasenko. Like how as he's got 2 goals and 4 points, and so from an outsider's perspective, that might seem underwhelming. But how would you say he's fit in? Easy transition? Does it look like he's gelling well with this group?
I think he's having a little trouble with it. We were out in Western Canada right after he made his debut, and he said he was having a hard time. His first new team in 11 years in the NHL, and his whole professional life is in St. Louis. His family's in St. Louis. So I think it's a big adjustment for him. He does have Artemi Panarin, who's known for a long time. They combined to beat Canada back in 2011 in the World Juniors, so they have some good history together on the ice and international events. But he's never really played with them in the NHL, and certainly not with any of the other guys on the Rangers. So, I think it's an odd situation where you've got a guy who was a star, one of the main characters in St. Louis through a Stanley Cup, through a decade of playing, and now he's the guy that's got to adjust to everybody else. So I think it's taken him some time. And the fact that Chris Drury made this trade so far ahead of the deadline was probably, a shrewd move to give him that kind of time and get acclimated and figure out where he fits. Now I would imagine you have to kind of reshuffle the deck a little bit when Patrick Kane gets here and figure out where everybody goes because you have so many stars. But it's been an adjustment, and I think they're okay with that because they want him to be comfortable. And now is not really the most important time of the year for the Rangers. They kind of know. They're 10 points clear of the wild card chase in the East. They're about 10 points behind Carolina, maybe 6 or 8 behind Jersey. They're going to finish second or third, probably third in that division. And I think they're really using these last 22 games to kind of sharpen their focus, play the way they want to play, be healthy, figure out where all their new guys fit, and be ready for the playoffs. So they've given themselves some good runway here with Tarasenko and I guess with Kane, to try to figure out what works best. And it's going to be a challenge for Gerard Gallant and his coaching staff. You don't see teams like this in the salary cap era of so many skilled guys, trying to fit in on 2 power play units. The Rangers have a very dominant top power play unit. And these top 2 lines that they got to try to figure out what works best and really try to play as complete a game as they can. Their biggest issue when they lost 4 in a row before last night was they weren't playing good defense. And that, I don't know if Patrick Kane or Vladimir Tarasenko helps you play good defense, but they have to figure it out in the context of a team system, and they've got some time to do it. And like I said, if they were chasing one of those last playoff spots or hunting for first place in the Metro, it might be a little different, but they're kind of coasting, I guess. I don't think that's how they would look at it, but they kind of know where they're going to be for playoff time. So I think they're giving themselves some time to experiment and tinker a little bit.
What are your thoughts on Igor Shesterkin's year? The reigning Vezina winner from last season. Just looking at his stats really quickly here: 26-10 and 7 record, but a 910 save percentage and a 265 goals against average. Not necessarily the same quality of numbers we saw from him last season with the New York Rangers. What have you thought about his year so far, and how he could shape up when it comes time for the Rangers to make a playoff run?
I mean, they need him. They need him to be, if not Vezina Trophy winning Igor Shesterkin, at least a notch or two above what he's been. And he's a guy who's incredibly hard on himself. He doesn't really talk too much after games. He's just too much, too intense, beating himself up a bit after he has a bad game. I talked to him, early in the year when he was kind of at the same level, struggling a little bit, and he'd taken up meditation on off days between games to try to calm his mind a little bit. But I think, when you throw down a season like he did last year, which was one of the 5 best goalie seasons in the history of the NHL, as high as 937 or 936 save percentage, they were Hasek type numbers that he put up last year. And that is an impossible standard to set for a guy like him, especially a young guy like that. So I think there was going to be some natural, regression for him this year. I don't think he thought it would go this far, but I think the confidence that the team has in him, it hasn't really wavered. He gives up a few more goals than you'd think, but I think as a team they play a lot better than they did for the bulk of last season, where they were really relying on him, to steal games. So I'm curious to see how he'll handle these last 22, whether he gets 15 or so of the 22 starts left. Yara Halak has been real good as his backup, but obviously, this time of year, get into the playoffs, the backup doesn't really matter. It's all about the number one guy, and Shesterkin is still clearly the number one going into the playoffs. And last season in the playoffs, I think maybe people forget because they went so far. He was terrible against the Penguins the first few games. He got pulled in both games 3 and 4 in Pittsburgh. That was, I think people were wondering, is this guy, is this really the guy? His first real playoff experience, and he looked really shaky for a little while there before he got himself steadied. So maybe they're feeling like he's getting the shakiness out of the way now, and he'll be ready because he knows how sharp you have to be once you get into the playoffs, especially if they're going to be facing Jersey or Carolina, 2 incredibly potent, high-powered offenses who throw a lot of shots at you. So I think they feel like if he's going to have his struggles, they'd rather have him now than in April.
A final question for you here before we let you go. Saturday is a game that I think hockey fans should probably have circled on their calendar. In fact, it's going to be one of those nationally televised ABC games in the U.S. They're going to show it nationally here in Canada on Sportsnet. It's the Bruins. It's the Rangers. And I got to ask you, what kind of test is that game for the Rangers? And maybe they'll have Patrick Kane. Maybe that'll be his debut game. And, this will be a test. Like, how much are you looking forward to that game to maybe seeing, hey, where do the Rangers stack up against the team that right now people think is the best in the East in Boston?
If the Rangers have their full complement of players, I am intrigued. I think the Bruins came in when the Rangers were still bobbing along at 500 the first couple months of the season, and it wasn't even close at the Garden back in November. So this will be a better test. The Rangers have obviously been a lot better the last 2 months, but yeah, it's hard to gauge right now. I'm sure they'll have Kane by then. Will Keandre Miller be back? Will Ryan Lindgren be back? Those are 2 guys that kind of make their defense what it is. In more, not necessarily Miller, but Lindgren kind of in that supportive role for Adam Fox as his partner. And without Miller, Jacob Trouba is a little bit more lost. So if you're missing one or both of those guys, I don't know how eagerly people are going to want to watch it, because it could be another Bruins steamroll. But I think, at full complement, and like you said, if that is Patrick Kane's first game, what a great stage, national, across North America against the top team in the league. It'll be interesting to see how they use him, how he gets acclimated, how quickly he can rekindle that chemistry that he had with Artemi Panarin that's made him want to reunite with him for seemingly this entire season. We've been talking about whether Kane was going to want to come to the Rangers or not. So, yeah, there's a lot of intrigue. It feels like this trade has been agreed upon, and we're just sort of waiting for it for days now. And then finally, once the guy gets here, there's still more intrigue to come about how well he fits, how he's going to play. A lot of eyes are going to be on the Rangers, and I think that's kind of the way it's been a lot over the years. You think back to the early 2000s with Messier, before Gretzky was here, Messier came back, Eric Lindros, Theo Fleury. Didn't
Pavel
work so
Bure.
well.
Yeah.
Didn't work so well in the early 2000s when Glenn Sather was collecting over the hill Hall of Famers. But I don't know if Patrick Kane's quite that far over the hill, and certainly the team itself is in a lot better place than it was back then. So it'll still be fun to watch, and a lot of attention's going to be coming on the Garden for sure.
Yeah. And you know what? However it shakes out, we just look forward to your coverage for the readers with The Athletic, for the listeners on the Garden Faithful podcast with you and Steve Valiquette. You have no shortage of topics to get to. So we appreciate you taking a few minutes out of your super busy schedule to join us. Thanks for this, and good luck for what should be a crazy week ahead for you.
All right. Thanks, guys.